Okay, this is Nick Rook at College Golf Camps of America. Hope everybody's doing well out there. Today we are joined by Dr. Mike Gervais. Mr. Gervais is a sports psychologist who's worked with many different professional elite athletes over the years, including the Seattle Seahawks. He's had multiple engagements with ESPN and NBC and other promotions with what he does and how he promotes, or how he gets the most out of his elite athletes. So, Mr. Gervais, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. And so we talked to Mr. Gervais a little bit before our call, and obviously the topic today is grit. And we've been going through this the last few weeks, getting different people's opinions on grit and what grit is and how to develop a gritty player, et cetera, et cetera. So, Mr. Gervais, maybe take a second or take a few minutes here and let us know a little bit more about you, what you do, what you're about, maybe some of the people you've worked with, and give our audience a little bit of information about who you are.
Sure. Thank you. It's sometimes useful to give like a parallel track, if you will. And let me just start with the most mechanical and easiest part so people can have some context to what I'm talking about. And then it's useful to talk about reasons why I'm compelled and wanting to understand how the human spirit and mind and body work inside of whatever given craft that we're interested in, whether that be golf or said sport of choice. Is that first it started with an underdegree degree in psychology, and then I kept going and I wanted to understand more. And a master's degree in psychology was not enough as well, and I found myself compelled to some of the harder sciences. And I received a master's degree in kinesiology, and then went back to psychology for a PhD. And why do I share that with you is because I'm still trying to learn, and that's been almost 15 years ago. So what ended up taking place as soon as I got done with the education track is that I realized I still didn't know enough about how the mind and body work under pressure and in rugged and hostile environments. And I've just set to we can on how to help others be able to pursue their very best. And it's a very clear idea to be able to, have are engaged in them wanting to pursue their potential. Essentially, what's led me to have wonderful experiences across many different sports of people that are exceptional at what they do, and I've learned more from them than I had ever hoped to be able to do.
Awesome. Now, so you've worked with a couple of, I believe you've worked with a couple of PGA players, and you've certainly, you've been involved with ESPN on a couple different levels. So maybe take us through maybe some of the elite golfers that you've worked with, and maybe just really quickly talk about what you feel that makes them a gritty player.
Sure. I've enjoyed the time I've spent in golf, and there's a very unique characteristic that many golfers share. And one of those characteristics is that they think, and they think a lot, and they think clearly. And then as soon as they're put under some sort of duress or pressure, that natural tendency and the intelligence they have becomes part of the process that keeps them stuck and small and tight and creates hesitation. And so the very asset that many golfers have, which is their ability to think clearly, also becomes a double-edged sword. And in comparison, when we think about golf as compared to gladiator sports and or call it modern times in the UFC or mixed martial arts or even the ruggedness inside of football or rugby, is that there's a very different element at play, is that combative sports have real danger involved inside of the decision-making and actions that they take. When they hesitate or make a mistake, they could get hurt badly. And as comparison, in golf, hesitation, the pain around hesitation or being tight or pulling or whatever the error might be inside the swing, the danger is perceived. And it doesn't mean it doesn't feel real, but what's on the line oftentimes for golfers is money and or cut and or the way they look, and depending on what the professional circumstances are. And so there's just I think it's really important just to level set that the danger inside of golf is often something that is of first world problems, and it is often self-manufactured. And that's not to make light of the experience, because we all know what it feels like to be standing over a ball and with friends watching, or the gallery, and feel all of that tension. And so, not to make light of it, but I think the context is really important as a level setting for what we're actually trying to do inside of golf, which is to be fully present, to be fully focused in an environment in which we choose to be in.
Well, that is awesome stuff. So continuing on the grit topic, maybe talk about some things that you've created, maybe some environments where you force athletes, from your perspective, to enter gritty environments that you create through competitive practice, or some type of competitive game, or whatever it might be. So you've worked with the Seahawks, for example, and other major sports and and elite athletes. Maybe some examples from those situations.
Coach Carroll from the Seattle Seahawks has much to share about his insights around how he cultivates a culture that finds and then supports grit. And the relationship between the general manager and the head coach, John Schneider, and Coach Pete Carroll at the Seattle Seahawks is an incredible dynamic relationship that allows them to be able to go find gritty athletes, and then the coaching and environment pulls the best part of that out of them. And so it's wonderful for the last handful of years that I've been able to watch athletes that are naturally gritty demonstrate that on a regular basis, and then also observe how the coaching staff and the culture that Pete Carroll has created supports and cultivates and even trains grit for these men that are doing exceptional things. And if we take a look at just the history of grit, I think it's important to level set that Angela Duckworth has been notable in researching and understanding grit, and she points to a definition that it's passion and perseverance for the long-term goals. And if we decode or dissect that just a bit, maybe a layman's term first way to understand it is that it's doing the difficult and boring things for an extended period of time. And that's the way I've come to understand what grit looks and feels like. And the history of this is that Francis Galton, which is actually way back to Darwin's cousin, he first thought that high achievement is based on three things: ability, zeal, and the capacity for hard work. And it's actually not talent is where this idea first started. And so Duckworth was inspired by that, and she said, well, what is this thing about hard labor and doing difficult things? And what we've come to find is that the advantage of the gritty person is their ability to have stamina and do the difficult things over time. And what we find is that most people that have that inner fire, that want to explore their potential, or they want to be great at something, is that drive is what propels them through the dips, the plateaus, the internal setbacks, and the external obstacles that get in the way or are the natural process of the road towards mastery or success or achievement. And it's that ability to bite down and do difficult things when it's difficult that is part of grit.
Well, that's awesome. Well, maybe, this is maybe two different topics. A is obviously we deal with a lot of parents in junior golf, and which is a slippery slope because everybody wants their kids obviously to be gritty players and to be tough and get a low score and all that type of thing. But we also deal with a lot of college coaches and a lot of PGA instructors around the country. So maybe give us two examples. One, the first example from a parent's perspective is how can I help support a gritty environment for my junior golfer? I want him to become a junior golfer if that's what he's passionate about. In terms of, I want him to play college golf if that's what he wants to do. What are some of the things I can do as a parent to help support and not take away the joy of playing golf, but also put enough pressure on them to create that hard labor, that hard work kind of mindset?
Great question. And grit is actually, there's a developmental arc to grit. And once you have spent time and understand the value of grit, it becomes something that seems more natural. But to a young athlete, it just looks like hard work and feels like hard work. And the understanding of how that's going to pay off later is only conceptual. And so as parents, if we take a look at the two main factors of grit, which is passion and perseverance, the perseverance part is relatively easy. It's reminding them the importance of doing difficult things and demonstrating to them when the athlete is actually doing something that's difficult, and providing just recognition that that's it. You're doing it right now. And that's one of the great shapers of behavior, is immediately pointing out when that behavior occurs. So as parents, if we value grit, we can demonstrate when perseverance or stick-to-itness is taking place. But that's probably the least, the lower order challenge in cultivating an environment of grit. It's more about passion. And so if passion is that inner fire, the fire in the belly that somebody has to want to go the long distance, and that passion is often, if you think about it as a fire, it's often blanketed by a heavy, it's often de-intensified by like this wet, heavy blanket that we put on the fire. And that heavy blanket is consumed with fatigue and fear. Those are the two elements that get in the way of having inner fire. And so as parents, if it's almost irresponsible to talk about grit without helping support recovery in an intelligent way. And so those two go hand in hand. They toggle with each other, is that when we have hard work, if we go too long, too hard, too far, and we redline too often, what takes place is that we don't have enough fuel and zest and zeal and energy and inner fire to be able to go the distance. And so on the world stage, we spend, if not more time, talking to elite athletes and performers about the science of recovery than we do about hard work. And so that would be one thing to pay attention to, that it's fatigue and fear that get in the way of passion. And the recovery models are so important to help with the fatigue.
Well, that's awesome, because a lot of parents of junior golfers try to create that pressure environment, but sometimes they go maybe overboard, and to where now the player doesn't enjoy the process anymore, and it's more of a job, and now this is mom or dad's dream or their grit, not necessarily the kid's grit. So is the passion, is it something that needs to be mentored over the years, or is it something kids some have it more naturally than others? And if they don't have it naturally, you just continue to support it and, like you said, not redline it too often and take it to a point and then back off and praise them for the hard work? Would that be a good approach?
Well, I think, yes and no. I think that you brought up like 3 or 4 really important ideas, is that, and let's see if we can kind of go through them. One is when a parent's passion is greater than the athlete's passion. That's just really important to pay attention to. It's probably not going to work out the way that they want. And, it's really hard
It's a really valid point that parents need to hear. So say that again.
When parents' passion for success or growth is larger than the athlete's talent, or I'm sorry, than the athlete's passion, that becomes a recipe for just really disaster in the relationship, hopefully a lifelong relationship between a parent and a son or daughter. And so here's kind of what you want to try to do as a parent, is find what the natural spark is for your son or daughter, and then whatever that natural spark is, where you don't have to challenge them to do it. They want to do it. They love it. They enjoy it. And matching the environment to support that, and then progressively put them under more intensified situations. And so if at one time the athlete loved golf, let's say, but is falling out of love with golf, or the work ethic required for it, it's a really tricky scenario, and there's no clear-cut answer, but it certainly is. The answer is not applying more pressure. The answer is often about deepening the relationship, helping the young child or adolescent understand the value of growth and the importance of being open to learning and loving challenge rather than being fearful of it. And so I'll say one more piece about this, is that oftentimes kids leave sport because of the car ride home. They don't leave it because of the challenge. They don't leave it because of the pressure. That's a mistake. The reason that people hold back, whether it's young or old, we hold back because we're hedging our bets that if we let it rip, the consequences might be too great. And oftentimes for young athletes, the consequence is the disappointment from the caregivers. And that car ride home is awful when there's either silence or malcontent or manipulation or the types of questioning that many of us will do to try to get an answer. And then we get frustrated because the adolescent or young athlete or college athlete is not giving us what we want. And all of that is a sabotage to the essence of a loving relationship that's meant to support and challenge people to pursue their potential. So I know I've just given you a mouthful, and there's lots of ways to deconstruct what we just talked about. But I hope there's at least a central theme that could run through that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, we could peel this onion back all day long, let's be honest, about grit, and, we could be on the phone for a couple of hours here. So, and maybe as it applies to PGA instructors that are bringing in the young athlete to teach them and give them some competitive environments, and maybe even the college coach or the high school coach, at the end of the day, what's the best process for, you guys talk about win forever, always competing, and I love the Scottish philosopher that you guys quote on your website and throughout some of your literature is, no pressure, no diamonds. Now, again, you could peel that onion back all day long, but what a great, 4-word sentence. And how can that apply to, to the coaches working with junior golfers and college golfers?
Oh, great. Yeah, great. Thank you for that. And no pressure, no diamonds is, it's eloquent, it's nice, it's wonderful. And the idea is that with just the right amount of stress and pressure, we're able to find our very best. And there is a place, so performing under pressure, we would consider is actually substandard to the idea of dissolving pressure. So without pressure, we don't get diamonds, that's right. And then the next phase, though, is dissolving pressure, where you can become completely fluid. And if there's something greater than a refined diamond, that would be the space that we're talking about. When we dissolve pressure, there's the opportunity to have the complete access to our internal and external skills, where we become completely consumed and engaged with what's happening in the very present moment. And that's where great talent is revealed and mastery is revealed and high performance is revealed. And so performing under pressure is great, but we leave that really to a training environment where we're continually valuing the idea of progression, making it just a little bit harder. Because when we make it a little bit more challenging, that's where we find out what we need to learn to grow from and what we need to get better at to be able to be fluid in moments that other people are finding where they're small and stuck. And so the concept of dissolving pressure is a wonderful idea, and that's actually very much trainable.
Awesome. It kind of comes back to, I've certainly been told before that failure is not final, it's fertilizer, right? And so how can we take the failure, learn from it, and continue to create that hardworking young athlete or elite athlete to where they take the failure with hard work to create more grit? And you talk about guys like Jordan Spieth, for example. That dude just seems to want to get it done, and he just wants to it just seems like he wants to win, and he figured out a way to win. And Adam Scott, obviously, right now is playing really well. Same type of, at least the perception watching on TV is that these guys, like a duck, above water, they're pretty cool. Things are going pretty well, but underneath the water, they might be paddling harder than you think.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, the work, you're exactly right on the money. I mean, the work underneath the surface is becoming aware of the inner dialogue and moving it from a negative frame to a positive frame. And sometimes that takes great work, and sometimes it's relatively easy. And the greater awareness we have of our inner dialogue about doing things that are difficult, then, when we don't value doing things that are difficult because we feel like the pressure to fail is so great, we tighten up. But when we love doing difficult things and we have this inner dialogue that's what we do. We do challenging and difficult things, and that's how I'm going to keep growing, and that's how I'm going to find my best. So place me in environments that are difficult, because that's what I'm signing up to do. It's a whole different experience, and that psychological pivot, if you will, from an avoidance failure framework to an approach success framework is fundamental, and it starts with the love of progression and the love of going for it, as opposed to the fear of failure. Failure is not bad. It's the fear of failure that gets us stuck and creates a smallness within us. It's the fear,
Sure.
not the failure in itself.
Sure. Well, that's a great point, and Dr. Gervais, we'll wrap this up here. You can always, obviously visit Dr. Gervais' website, which is michaelgervais.com, and I also know that you have some great posts with Pete Carroll and the Seahawks on winforever.com. So it's michaelgervais.com and or winforever.com, and so. Mr. Gervais, we'll give you the last word here. Anything else you'd like to add? We certainly appreciate your time, and we know you're a busy person. Obviously, you're traveling and whatnot, so thank you for taking the time to speak with us today, and anything else you'd like to add?
Just closing thought. I'm grateful to have this conversation with you, and I'm grateful for all the people that I've learned from in my journey and my path. And so I'm honored to have the conversation, and thank you, and I wish you and your efforts absolute best to be able to share the insights and wisdoms from people that are also interested in the path of mastery. So thank you very much.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hey, thanks for getting together with us today on the topic of grit. And Mr. Gervais, we'll talk to you here shortly. Have a great day.
Okay, likewise. Take care.
Okay, take care. Thanks.